Hello, Hero Collectors here. How's it going, everybody? Hope you all are doing fantastic. I know I am. And today we're going to be taking a look at these three figures you see before you, none of which really have anything to do with each other aside from them all being related to Spider Man. So we have the Spectacular Spider Man cartoon basic black suit action figure, we have the Marvel Legends Super Deluxe Cyborg Spider Woman, and we have the Marvel Legends Ultimate Beetle figure. So without further ado, let's get into the review. All right, getting into this quick fire review, we're going to start off with the Super Deluxe Cyborg Spider Woman from the Spider Verse movie. Now, I'm going to start off by saying I was able to get this for $15. She retailed at 50, but thanks to GameStop clearance and my good buddy Summit City Spidey having a coupon, he was able to get it for me for only $15. So everything I'm about to say, keep in mind that I only paid that much. I didn't pay the full retail to get this figure. So my criticisms may be still harsh, but I'm also not that upset by them because of what I paid. So, getting into the good of the figure, I think the sculpt is really great. There is lots of details here, and even things down to the spider webbing. It looks like it's wire, like tied together, or maybe string, because it's such a large character that you can't just do the standard webbing for this costume. And there's all kinds of like tech detail, like on the face and on the gun arm, and all the armaments and shoulder pad. The chain with the spider logo is really cool. I like how the shoulder pad with spikes are almost like bullets in a way. I don't know if that's what they're meant to be, but it looks like that. There's a lot of asymmetry to the costume. It's two different styles of boots and different knee pads and straps and a yellow belt. It's all kinds of messy, but works in a way that's Mad Maxy or post apocalyptic in a sense. The gun arm is cool. I like that it does have some articulation to it, how you can rotate in certain areas, and even has the ports available for some blast effects, but not many really fit into the ports. And then it poses really well and is sturdy. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of trouble once I got it into a pose, it falling over. It stayed pretty well once I figured out where I wanted the figure, and I didn't have very many issues from there. Now, getting into the bad, I will say the no paint on the back of the figure is really distracting, especially as you are slightly turning it on the arm. It just goes from paint on the web lines to no paint, and it looks very uh, bare in a sense, and just really would have benefited from having that paint. I know there's a lot of paint and a lot of new sculpt on this figure, but just that little bit more would have gone the extra mile to improve this figure. And then my other gripe is that she comes with no accessories. There are no blast effects for the gun. There are no interchangeable hands for the standard arm because she just has a grip hand. There's no fist, there's no thwip, nothing. It's just a C grip with nothing to hold. I just blast effects and an alternate hand. That would just really set this figure to being really good despite me not initially even wanting her. Like, the small role that this character had in the movie did not justify the $50 price point to me, but even then I would have been more inclined if this figure came with more. Now, does this figure have the fun factor? I would say yes. I did have a good time posing her around, and it wasn't super hard to get into poses. It's super limiting because of the style of this character and costume. The gun arm is very just in the way if you're trying not to use that in a pose or shot. So it can be a bit difficult, but once you get it into the pose, the figure is just fun to look at. And with all that, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Again, my rating for this is just a little bit biased because, again, I only paid $15 for a $50 figure. So I feel good about my purchase and the experience I have with collecting this figure. That does affect my rating quite a bit. if you bought this at the full price, I can understand if you rank this a lot lower. Now, moving on to the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon symbiote Spider-Man figure. Right off the bat, I'm just going to say I know this is not a Marvel Legends style figure. It is meant to be from a basic toy line. It was not super expensive at the time. I knew this going in, so a lot of my criticisms you probably shouldn't take as seriously because again, this is an older basic line figure just to have toys out on the shelf for the media that was coming out. So I'm not expecting a like Legends level of articulation. So the good, I really appreciate the sculpt. It really captures the angular and lanky proportion. While I do think he is too skinny, it does capture the style of the animation for Spider-Man in this show. And especially like the spider logo, it evolves over the 3 episodes that he does wear the costume. So I do appreciate the sculpting that went into it and the paint work. It still holds up to this day, front and back. And the head sculpt too, again, it captures that real angular shape to the Spider-Man of this universe. And every time I just look at it, I know that that's Spectacular Spider-Man. The bad of the figure is the range. While the legs get a lot of movement and I would say are pretty great even by today's standard, aside from no ankle pivot, the arms are really lacking. There's only a swivel at the wrist, just barely a 90-degree bend at the elbow, no bicep swivel, and no crossbody. The torso is then very limited because it's got a waist swivel and then a very minor ball joint at the chest. And then of course the head has only side to side movement. So very limited there, but again, it's a basic figure. And the hand choices for this figure are strange to me. He has a kind of wide open hand, but not quite a wall crawling hand, and then a C-grip hand. I don't remember if this figure came with any kind of accessory, and if it did, what it was. It just feels like a strange choice to me for hand options. Now, does this figure have the fun factor? Not really. It was kind of hard to get some good poses out of this guy. It's a basic figure. It's not meant to be articulated super well like today's Legends are. Now, in terms of rating, I'm going to give it a 5.5, 6 out of 10, something like that. I bought it off of a friend mostly to have this as a representation of Spectacular Spider-Man in my collection, just to be on that shelf representing him. I didn't buy this because it was super articulated and going to be an amazing figure. I knew what I was getting into going in. So once I eventually put him on the shelf, that is what he is meant to be there for. He's not meant to be a super articulated figure. So I do appreciate this figure a lot, even though it is, again, a basic line figure, not meant for articulation of the level we are getting today. Now, last but certainly not least, we have the Ultimate Beetle figure. Now, I did not get this one until very recently. I got Ultimate Beetle and the Spider-Man from my friend Notorious Bricks. I'll leave a link to his Instagram down in the description. Go make sure you go follow him. But yeah, so back to Beetle. This was a huge missing slot in my Ultimates collection. And it's a character I did not see them really revisiting at all, so I was happy to backtrack and get him. Getting into the good, I think the sculpt on him is really good. It eventually got reused for other figures like Ultron and Silvermane, and it still holds up to this day. There's some other parts of it I want to talk about in the bad, but the sculpt itself is really solid. Got all the bubbles and the kind of ribbed lining, kind of like a Colossus throughout the undersuit, and all the silver is painted really nicely. There's a few minor scuffs, but it's nothing super distracting. The head captures the look of Beetle from the comics really well, and I really like the wings. The green to light green on the inside of the wings adds a nice contrast to the red and silver that is on the rest of the figure. And I was really surprised by the articulation range on this figure. His head can look up really well, arms have good range, hands can bend down and do the little blasters on his wrists nicely, good crunch, good leg articulation. Just overall, it was solid to pose around. Getting into the bad, my criticisms of this figure, the loose hips. And I don't know if it's necessarily hips or which part of it is loose, but when you kind of hold him at the torso and just kind of like wobble him a little bit or wiggle, you just see the legs go all over the place, and it's not as sturdy. And even in the knees, it's kind of loose, so that is a bit of a shame. And then a few of the parts on this figure, like the hips, in both on the body and on the legs, and the torso to a certain degree, feels kind of breakable. Like there's not a lot of give to the plastic that they chose, almost in a cheap way that like one day it's just going to snap on me. So that does kind of scare me when posing him, but he has held up pretty well, and I haven't really heard any cracking. It's just the feel of the plastic when you go to move it just has that almost brittle feel to it. But now, does this figure have the fun factor? I think so. It was fun to pose around. I did like putting him with a lot of my Ultimates figures, posing him with my Ultimate Spider-Man as well. The Peter Parker was fun. I don't know if they actually did clash in the comics. I did not read that far. I need to actually read the full run eventually. But he really fits in well with the rest of the figures from my Ultimate collection, and I'm glad to finally have this missing piece. And with all that, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Yeah, 7 out of 10. It's a fun figure. It's older, but still holds up to this day with those few issues that I have. Again, the plastic may feel brittle, but nothing has broken on me. And the loose hips is a problem, but I can still get him into standard standing poses. So not impossible to pose around, but does have its problems. So that was my quick fire throwback Spider-Man action figure review. Not all of them were Marvel Legends, but they were Spider-Man related figures. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Also, like the video, make sure you're subscribed, and I will talk to you all in another video, another post, another time.